Wait, hold your applause till the end, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a very exciting episode as the Vols face Alabama. Ew, am I right? But anyways, hey, Vol Nation, welcome back to Torch Sports. I'm Carmen Rivera. I hope you're ready for another Torch-tastic episode. Yes, that's a fake word, but we do have a real tough sports coverage for you where it's everything UT Athletics, NBA, MLB, with a little bit of the saucy opinions. First, we start off with the Orange Zone, Pick Six, Rocky Talk, and Sportscast. I hope you enjoy this episode. Now get in the zone with the Orange Zone. Jackson, take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Orange Zone. I'm your host, Jackson Chalk, alongside Zach Pelfrey, Luca Tao, and Colton Pennington. Let's jump right into it. It may not have been a shootout, but the Vols did their job against the Aggies in front of a checkered Neyland Stadium. Tennessee found themselves down early in the first, but Milton eventually finds Jacob Warren in the flats to get the Vols on the board. The Aggies have the ball at midfield to start the second quarter. Max Johnson drops, but just gets swarmed. Tyler Barron got his first sack, 2 sacks by the Vols in the game, but let's move to the punt. Everyone knows the punt. D. Williams, 40-yard line, gets it. It's going to make one guy miss. Whoop! Right there, 2 guys, whoop! And then watch this, just turn the Jets on. He's gone. Looks like they're running in slow motion. That would essentially give the momentum to the Vols the rest of the game, but it's not over yet. The run game seemed to have helped the Vols a lot. They would get into tough situations, but it would escape with a run like the first down here. They didn't end up scoring, however. But Max Johnson drops back. He's got a chance. They're looking to score. Down 4, down just nobody. Down Gabe Judy Lally gets the pick, and he's going to turn it back 36 yards. Vols would end up getting a field goal out of that pick. Now, fourth quarter, 34 seconds left. Need a first down, 4th and 10, drops back, pressure coming, it's tipped, but no love. Kamal Haddon does a little dance before he eventually slides, gives the Vols the win. All right, guys, now we saw the recap. I know you guys went to the game live, you saw what happened. Luke, what was your biggest takeaway?
I mean, to me, this game just solidified us as a run-first team again. I mean, the run game was clearly our strength. Milton threw for, I think, 11 for 22 with only 100 yards passing and a fourth-quarter red zone interception.
Ugly interception.
Pretty ugly. But, I mean, the run game was super strong this game as it has been previously this season. So, I mean, I think this game really solidified us as a running team.
Zach?
I think it also solidified us as a defensive team. I mean, the pressure on the quarterback, Max Johnson, was rushed on almost every single snap he took in the pocket. But also I want to go back to what you said. The run game is what's saving us right now. Tennessee has a lot of potential with running, but not a lot of momentum with passing. And I just got to say, Pierce is him. He's a dog.
Golden?
Yeah, I mean, you both talked about the run game and the defense, and we were lucky they showed up because the passing offense was absolutely awful the entire game. 100
That's one
yards
way to put
total. 11 of 22 was Milton, so 50% completion percentage. On 5 red zone trips, they scored 13 points, 1 touchdown, 2 field goals. That's not going to cut it against Alabama next week for sure, and it's not going to cut it against a lot of these teams. We're coming up against Kentucky away, Missouri away. We got a lot of tough matchups, and they've got to throw the ball better than that because it was really, really ugly.
Absolutely. Now, a few hours before the Vols matchup with A&M, Alabama kicked off against Arkansas at 11 local time. And the Tide did not start the first quarter well. Arkansas with 2 field goals early, but Jalen Miller just throws this bomb to a wide open Kobe Prentice, and he's going to be able to walk it in to take the lead. Soon after, Bama with possession again. Milroe, high-flying ball to Jermaine Burton. Watch this catch, a little deja vu. Ooh, not a catch in the NFL, folks, but we're in college. Now, we're halfway through the second. Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson dropping back, but he's just going to get swarmed. Nowhere to throw that ball. Tide had 4 sacks on the day, that being one of them. Back to Alabama, pushing down the field. Milroe to the hands of his tight end, Amari Niblack, caught. Tide go up 21-6, but we're going to see a run here, and that's really going to be the end of the Tide's offense for the notable era. I mean, they score a field goal off this run, you're going to see you're going to bounce it outside, but after that, it's all Arkansas. Arkansas scored 2 touchdowns after this play, and that was really the game. Now, like I said, the Tide did not score in the second half, and they allowed 2 touchdowns. I mean, what were your guys' takeaway from this game as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, the first half of this game was the Alabama football that a lot of people have seen and recognized over the past few years, just dominant. I mean, Milroe had the deep ball going. I mean, the whole
we
first
saw it
half,
on those 3 clips.
The whole first half, and I believe there were more of those as well, where he's just lets it fly, and it was a really good pass every time in the first half. But I mean, as you said, they really cooled off and couldn't get anything going in the second half.
Well, with Milroe throwing it deep, he only completed 11 passes that entire game, but still managed to get over 200 yards passing. When it comes to those young receivers downfield, I mean, Milroe can get it to him, but it's kind of like we're seeing deja vu, seeing double in this game. With short passes not being able to be completed, but over 20 yards, he's got a 61% completion rate. And then one of my other takeaways was the O-line. Just not an Alabama offensive line. Very, very sloppy. 6 sacks allowed. Not to mention they've had 31 sacks this year through 7 games. So it's a rough time to be an Alabama offensive lineman.
Yeah, very uncharacteristic of them, especially from the past few years. Colton, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, going off about what you said, I was going to talk about the offensive line as well. You know, they allowed 5 sacks in this game. They've allowed 31 over the course of the season, like you said. I mean, that's the 4th most in the entire country, and that's really uncharacteristic for Alabama. I mean, to have a position that is that bad, and you know, all of college football, they're one of the worst. That's super uncharacteristic. And then, you know, moving on a little bit, I mean, no wide receiver in the entire game had more than 2 catches. I mean, that's pretty crazy too. I mean, you've got to have a guy step up a game like this. I mean, especially in that second half, and they didn't score any touchdowns. They've got to have a wide receiver step up, and I think they're going to have to do that next week against Tennessee. They've got to have a wide receiver at least get more than 2 catches in a game, but they've got to have somebody step up. Whether it's Burton, you know, he's probably the one that's going to have to step up the most. He played really good against A&M last weekend, so hopefully. That can happen. I mean, or not happen, I guess, for Tennessee to win. Yeah. But for Alabama, they're hoping that the wide receivers can get going more too.
Absolutely. Now, that's going to wrap up our discussion on last week. But when the Orange Zone returns, we will be discussing everything you need to know for the upcoming matchup between the Vols and the Crimson Tide. In the meantime, we're going to send it over to Brendan and Jay for this week's Pick 6. Hit it, guys.
What's up, everyone? It's Brendan Green.
And I'm Jay King.
And we're back here once again for the College Football Pick 6 Games of the Week.
Like always, we asked you, the viewers, to vote your picks for the 6 college football matchups this weekend.
We're going to give our thoughts on the upcoming matchups following by our predictions. Now let's get into it with our first matchup this Saturday, with number 7 Penn State heading up to Columbus to play number 3 Ohio State for the other border war. Now, here are my thoughts. Ohio State is favored by 4.5 points, and 62% of our viewers chose Ohio State to win. Now, the biggest point, the 3 points I'm going to say for Ohio State to win, is that Ohio State needs to pass the ball a lot more effectively. The home section needs to be a lot more rowdy. The last time Ohio State had a big game at home, they got blown out by Michigan. Now, Penn State is going to need to figure out ways on the defense to stop their big receivers like Igbuda and Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, Jay, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, the last time Penn State has won the shoe has been since 2011. I know they've looked great so far this season, but, I mean, I just don't trust them versus Ohio State. James Franklin has only won versus the Buckeyes 1 time in his career. Give me the Buckeyes. I think it's pretty easy. For the next game, we have Utah versus USC, and ever since Caleb Williams has gotten to SC, Utah has been USC's kryptonite. And USC pretty much needs to win this game versus Utah to keep their playoff hopes alive. It's going to be in SC this year, and Cam Rising is still a question mark. I think USC survives, and they keep their playoff hopes alive by a thread.
I'm going to also go with USC on this one. They get their bounce back victory against Utah, just like last time. Next up, we have number 16 Duke and number 4 FSU. Now, here are my thoughts. Now, FSU is favored by 14.5 points, and 78% of our viewers chose that FSU would win. Now, here are my thoughts. Duke cannot be counted out in this game. You may think that just because that Duke is ranked 16th and FSU is ranked 4th, Duke did go into Clemson week 1 and beat Clemson. Now, FSU, they need to keep and limit the mistakes when it comes to this matchup. If they do, they might find themselves out of the playoff picture if they lose this game. Jay, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know Florida State has struggled against lower opponents like, Boston College, but I just still think Florida State's going to win. I think it's pretty simple. They're just the better team going in. Next up, we have South Carolina versus Missouri, and Carolina has another tough matchup to the biggest surprise in the SEC, really, and Missouri. And South Carolina has had a very disappointing season. I think Missouri goes on to win. They're going to win their Super Bowl this season. And ironically enough, South Carolina is 2-4 in their Super Bowls this year.
I'm also going to go with Missouri to win this one. They're a sleeper, just like Jay just said. And it makes me a little bit scared when we have to head up to Missouri next in the next coming up weeks. Now, next up, we have Washington State going up to number 9 Oregon, who just came off of a heartbreaking loss to Washington. Now, here are my thoughts. Put it simply, Oregon's number 9. If they want to have any chance of making the playoffs, they need to become Nittany Lion fans, and they just need to hope. They need to dominate this one, and they need to hope that any of the teams in the top 10 can lose for them to possibly win it. But I'm going to go with Oregon to win this match.
Yeah, no, Washington State has been a very big surprise this year, Pac-12's last season. Cameron Ward is still a Heisman dark horse, despite, Washington State not being a playoff contender. But I think they keep it competitive, but Oregon wins this must-win matchup. And last but certainly not least, the Vols head down to Tuscaloosa in the third Saturday of October. Brendan, what do you have?
This is a really hard match to gauge because both teams have glaring weaknesses, and both teams have had moments where some parts of our offenses have shut down. How will the O-line of Alabama's do against Tennessee's pass rush, and how will Tennessee's passing game be with Milton? Now, obviously, being biased here, I'm going to go with the Vols because I'm going to say it here, just saying, Joe Milton, I think, is going to have a Joe Milton masterclass game. So give me the Vols in this one.
Yeah, if you're here for my fair and unbiased opinion, well, you've come to the wrong place because Tennessee isn't just going to win. They're going to win by 50, all right? You hear that? And not only are they going to win by 50, but they're going to start their own 15-game winning streak versus Alabama, all right? This is the end of the Bama dynasty, and this is the start of the Tennessee dynasty. Go Vols.
Well, that concludes this episode of
Pick Six.
Oh, God. Well, that concludes this episode of Pick Six. We'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, welcome to Rocky Talk. I'm your host, Sophie Starkey, joined by Riley Haltom and Matthew Slitsky. We have a lot to cover this week, so let's jump right in, starting with NBA. So, we alluded to this a little bit last week. There have been a couple teams in the NBA who are not expected to perform well, but have done pretty good in the season so far. So, who are your dark horse teams for each NBA conference so far? Matt?
Obviously, you can't go without saying the Miami Heat when it comes to dark horses. A team that's been to the finals 2 out of the last 4 years, the conference finals 3 out of the last 4. It's just a team that always exceeds when it comes to postseason time. Jimmy Butler's a different player. He's not a regular season player. He's a postseason animal. And I got the Sixers this year. I know a lot of people like to doubt the Sixers with how they've performed over the last 4 years, getting eliminated either in the first or second round, especially last year, having the MVP and Joel Embiid. I like the Sixers. They got a new coach this year. In the West, Sacramento Kings. Just a really dynamic team with all-around talent, a great coach in Mike Brown, and Malik Monk, who's coming off the bench, just an elite scorer. The Kings are going to make a big push this year.
Riley?
Yeah, I like that you said the 76ers because I also got the Sixers as one of my dark horses. They're 2,700 in title odds. Not great, but great value for the bettors. Like you mentioned, Nick Nurse, just an incredible coach. He is going to take the Sixers higher than they've been the past couple of years. They've got plenty of depth, particularly if they make a move with James Harden, go and get some depth and maybe another role player. Sixers could be very scary. In the West, though, the Grizzlies, point blank. People are overlooking these moves that they're making. I mean, they're plus 2,400 right now. They trade Smart, or not directly, but replace Dillon Brooks with Marcus Smart. Desmond Bane, been an incredible scorer. You got Steven Adams back, the best offensive rebounder in the NBA. Makes everyone on that team better and has the most impact on the Grizz that a single player has on that entire roster. You got Jaren Jackson Jr., Defensive Player of the Year. D-Rose, leadership. He's going to bridge that gap with John Morant. And the rookies, who have been great in the preseason so far, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy. Grizzlies are going to make a splash this season.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about trading. There were some blockbuster trades surrounding the offseason. So which one do you guys think will have the biggest impact on the NBA?
Well, from a negative standpoint, it's easy enough to go with Bradley Beal to Phoenix. I know that's going to be a shock to most people, but when you have 3 players on the court that are all all-stars, future Hall of Famers, and unfortunately for them, they all play the same position in the sense that they all do the same thing, right? They don't pass the ball, they're offensive scorers, they don't swing the ball. So with that being said, you have 3 guys that are going to go out there, and there's not enough possessions for each guy, for Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. So because of that, and because of the lack of depth on that team in order to make these trades possible, they're going to have a massive negative impact in the standings. That's why I have them sliding down all the way to 5. Good, you can't go without saying Drew Holiday now to the Celtics. I think Drew's a better player than Marcus Smart. They replace Smart with Drew Holiday. You obviously add Kristaps Porzingis to the mix. You lose Robert Williams, and you lose Malcolm Brogdon. And then, obviously, in Milwaukee, Damian Lillard now paired with Giannis Antetokounmpo. The high pick and roll is going to be super interesting to see how they orchestrate that, how defenses try to get around that. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how the NBA deals with the freak time.
Yeah, like you said, it might be the obvious answer, but there's no one trade that's going to have a bigger impact on the NBA this season than Dame going to Milwaukee. I mean, if you know me, you know I'm a big Dame fan, and after 11 seasons in Portland, just down there struggling, he's going to Milwaukee, he's ring chasing, and this is the best way to ring chase. You get a guy like Dame who can score from just about anywhere on the basketball court, pair him up with Giannis, who is an absolute demon on the inside. It's going to be a tough deal for any other opposing team.
Yeah, Miami could beat him again, too. He should have gone to Miami if he really wants to.
Great points, but let's switch gears to baseball. It's been a wild postseason in the MLB, and I'm interested to see what your overall takes are on the postseason.
Wild postseason. You talk about arguably the best team in baseball history, right? In the Atlanta Braves, who come in with the best record, best team on paper in baseball history, and now get eliminated by last year's World Series runner-ups in the Philadelphia Phillies, who are now playing, of course, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Another surprise. In my opinion, the biggest surprise so far in the postseason. The Diamondbacks were the last wild card team to make it. They play a really good all-around Dodgers team with excellent pitching better than hitting, both on the relief side and the starting pitching, and they just take them down in 3 games. Absolutely incredible for the Diamondbacks. And of course, Texas beating Baltimore was a surprise, but Texas is a really good team. They have a very good shot to go a lot farther than just playing the Astros up 2-1 right now.
Yeah, I agree. The Rangers are a much better team than their record suggested. And the Orioles, like you said, just kind of disappointing going into this postseason. Just a bad performance from them. Tough to see the Dodgers get swept. That's my team. But not surprising at all if you look at it. They were going through an offensive slump. It was just not good with a beat-up pitching staff. I mean, you think about their starters, playoff Kershaw. We know how that goes. They're missing Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Walker Buehler. I mean, that's their rotation right there. 3 of their main guys are gone, and we know what Kershaw does in the playoffs. It was just setting up to be a terrible, terrible postseason for the Dodgers if you looked at it, but and it played out just exactly how we thought it would. And yeah, like you mentioned, the Braves.
I don't think anybody thought it was going to play out the way it did. I mean,
I did.
You thought you knew the Dodgers were going to lose?
I didn't think they were going to get swept, but I knew that they were going to lose.
Oh, I don't know that anybody saw that coming. Nobody.
Well, to pause you guys there, who do each of you have going to and then winning the World Series?
Well, Philly's just too good. As much as the Diamondbacks have arguably the most momentum right now in the postseason, the Phillies are just too good. They're too deep on both sides of the field. So they're going to take down the Diamondbacks. Right now, they have the advantage. They play tonight and tomorrow night. They should get it done in the next 2 nights. Now, when you look at the Astros, a team that has been in the postseason and has got to either the World Series or the Championship Series last 7 years in a row, it's hard to pick against a very good Houston Astros team. But this is the year. This is the year where the Rangers, they just have too much talent. They're up 2-1 right now. They have a very good starting pitching rotation. Relief is an issue, but they're up 2-1. They have the edge right now going back to Texas for Game 4. They're going to get this thing done, and we're going to see Texas and Philly in the World Series. Give me Texas, man, for the first time in over a decade.
I knew this was going to happen. We're agreeing on things. He didn't think it was going to happen pre-show. The Rangers were perfect until Wednesday. Corey Seager, 8 hits, 11 walks in 9 games. That's insane. And the Phillies are rolling. The D-backs ran into a hurt Dodgers team. I don't think they're on the level. They're on the level of the Phillies. And the Braves averaged about 6 runs per game this season. The offense wasn't great against the Phillies. They only got to 5 runs once. The other 3 games, 0, 1, and 2 runs. It was bad, and credit to that Phillies D, but the Braves are way better than that. They have an absolutely booming offense, but that being said, I'm going with the Rangers for my World Series pick. Phillies are perfect at home. The Rangers are dominant outside of one game. They're hot at the right time, and the Rangers get home field in the World Series. I think that's what it's going to come to, maybe go to 7 games.
It's not to say Philly can't win.
No,
Philly can
absolutely.
certainly win. They have as much talent as anybody in the MLB to do it.
Absolutely.
I think the Rangers just have the slight edge.
Well, that concludes this week's segment of Rocky Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Now back to Jackson and the Orange Zone crew. See you next week.
The third Saturday in October, a day that was feared by Tennessee fans for 15 long years. That was until October 15th, 2022, a day that saw the 6th-ranked Volunteers take down the 3rd-ranked Crimson Tide in Neyland Stadium. That day has since been engraved in the mind of every young Tennessee believer as one of the best of their short fandom. But that triumphant day was over a year ago, and the Vols now travel down to Alabama to face their longtime rival in enemy territory. Can the Vols turn the tide again and leave with cigars, or will the Crimson Tide take back their streak? I want to welcome everybody to the Orange Zone and to the Den, where our crew is going to break down what is the biggest game of this season thus far. We start with taking a look at last year's seasons, where it is one of the biggest games in what we've seen as Tennessee fans. Zach, talk us through it.
So, the team last year, Hendon Hooker, dog. Jalen Hyatt, dog. That team was straight out of a fever dream. It was the best Tennessee team that I've seen since my 19 years of life.
Yep.
It was just a gracious moment to see, and then after beating Alabama, first time I've ever seen it. A lot of us in our lifetimes have not seen it, young ball fans and all. But this year, we're looking at 2 totally different teams. We were looking at, last year was high-powered offense, defense, and pretty good defense from Alabama. This year, we're looking at minimalistic offenses with strong defenses and quarterback issues.
Let's take a second to kind of look through this graph. And those that have been watching the Vols for a while already know, but obviously Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young are our quarterback matchups, not what we have now. Number 6 versus number 3, we've got 17 versus 11 in our game coming up, and obviously the final score, 52-49. What stood out most when you saw this graphic?
Yeah, to me, it was really clear that last year the Vols had the Hendon Hooker to Jalen Hyatt connection going. Jalen Hyatt went for 5 touchdowns, all of the passing touchdowns. That's a pretty good connection you got between your quarterback and wide receiver. And like Zach was saying, it was a real offense-heavy game. 101 points scored. You're not really going to see that this year. It's going to be more defense-focused rather than the offense-powered game that we saw last year in Neyland Stadium.
Absolutely. Colton?
Yeah, from looking at it from defense, we talk about a lot of offense. Both defenses, they just couldn't stop the offenses whatsoever. It's both secondaries, really, really poor. You can't have a guy give up 5 touchdowns in a game. If you're a secondary, nobody could cover Jalen Hyatt the entire time. But Bryce Young ripped apart our defense too, 49 points. So, that was a big standout thing for me. It was just going to be whatever offense showed up, whatever offense scored, the most points, most touchdowns, just moved down the field the best, because both these defenses weren't as good. But this year, it's the complete opposite. Both these defenses are 2 of the best in the SEC, 2 of the best in the country. And so we'll see a lot lower scoring game for sure, but I'm excited to see what happens.
Absolutely. Now let's take a look at the graphic for this year. Like I said, a little different. We got Joe Milton versus Jalen Milroe. Not exactly the caliber of quarterback that we had last year, but there's still plenty of season left for them to prove themselves. Number 17, number 11, as I said earlier, and record, each team having 1 loss. What do you guys, you mentioned the defense, but other than that, there's 2 different teams that we're seeing right now.
100%. They're completely different teams. Last year we talked about we had 2 stud quarterbacks. This year, not that these quarterbacks aren't good, but from a fan perspective, last year you're used to seeing
They're
Bryce
different.
Young and Hooker. It's a completely different
different.
game. Both quarterbacks have struggled a little bit with the passing game so far this season. So it'll be interesting kind of stepping in their shoes too, kind of with as big of a matchup as it was last year, stepping into those quarterback shoes and trying to fill that with this game this year.
Yeah, I think you were a little nice there. I don't think either of these quarterbacks are very good, to be honest with you. And I think it's just going to be whoever is worse who's going to lose this game. Both these quarterbacks got to show up. Milroe has been playing a little bit better over the last 2 weeks. He was decent against Arkansas, decent against A&M, but Milton was not good against A&M. We've already talked about that today. He was not good. So whichever one of these quarterbacks can show up, move the ball down the field more. We also talked about Alabama's offensive line. That's going to be hard for Milroe, and Milton, he's going to have more time to throw. But like I said, he hasn't been good. Milroe's been playing better. So I think it's a toss-up. Which quarterback's going to show up and have a better game? But I think that's going to decide this one for sure.
I like the phrase, which quarterback's going to play worse. I think that kind of fits as well. Let's head over to our weaknesses. I mean, like you said, from the Tennessee perspective, we've got decision making. We've seen Joe Milton at times has not made the best passes that we've seen as fans. Obviously, we're not down there at field level, but it's just the passing and the decision making seems to have been questionable. I mean, the interceptions have been hard to watch, and not to mention the penalties last game were horrendous. From a fan's perspective, I remember just every other play was a boo, and it would be 5-yard gain. Oh, don't worry, we've got a penalty coming, or oh, we've got pass interference, something along those lines. As for Alabama, our weaknesses, four quarters. We saw in the Arkansas game when we were showing clips earlier, they haven't been able to hold what seems to be 4 quarters of a lead, I think, all season. I mean, they haven't done it, and offensive line obviously has been an issue too with them allowing the 4th most sacks, as you said earlier, and execution, them not getting their plays. What do you guys see as the weaknesses?
I mean, with decision making, like you were saying, with Joe, it seemed kind of sloppy play. Like, he hasn't seemed like he's 100% locked in on like the right play at the right time. And when he's moving out of the pocket and like looking for that play, trying to extend the play, it looks like he's a little uncomfortable still, and he's just not trusting himself to throw the ball where he thinks it should go. And we've seen that run into some problems with that. I mean, the last week against Texas A&M, 4th quarter interception in the red zone. That's not a good stat line. Just especially with the point that it was at the game, only up by 1. In this game, it's going to be really important that we take advantage of the mistakes that Alabama has, but if we're in the red zone, we have to score, because Alabama is one of those teams where if they have the chance to score, they will, and they'll put points up on the board, and we have to match that with our offense this year.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama's defense or Alabama's weakness, it's got to be the offensive line. I mean, 130th in FBS. Keep in mind that there's only 133 FBS teams, so that's very uncharacteristic for an Alabama team, and for a team that ran for 23 rushing yards. I had to double check that.
Yep.
23 rushing yards against A&M is ridiculous, completely unheard of from Alabama.
Absolutely. Now let's look at our kind of individual matchups. Let's start with you. What do you see? What individual matchups do you think are going to be a problem or just something to watch?
The matchup that I'm looking at this game is the Tennessee defense, front 7 specifically, against that Alabama offensive line. Like Zach was saying, Alabama's offensive line has looked pretty shaky. They're giving up just under 5 sacks a game, I believe is the average. I think it's 4.4 something sacks a game. And, I mean, that's just not enough to keep Jalen Milroe, kind of healthy the whole season. They're giving up that many sacks, and with the front 7 that Tennessee has, we're putting pressure on Milroe. We saw it against Max Johnson. We were able to, get past the A&M front line, and I believe they're going to be doing the same thing against Alabama. So that's the matchup that I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, Colton?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, the passing offense, but I think a lot of it has to do with the wide receivers as well. I mean, last week, none of them showed up. I mean, I know we got Brew out, but someone's got to step up. And this week, I think they're going against their best secondary that they've faced so far. Terry and Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Caleb Downs. They can all play some football. I mean, they're really, really good secondary. And that worries me a lot going towards this game, because the wide receivers are going to have to step up. It's not just Joe. The wide receivers got to get open too. And this is, like I said, this is the best secondary they've faced so far. So I think that's going to be a huge point in this game, is if they can get open and if they can move the ball down the field.
Absolutely. Zach?
I said the exact same thing, but on the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
I think that the Kamal Haddon versus Jermaine Burton, or the Tennessee secondary versus the Alabama wide receivers, is going to be a matchup. Tennessee has a history of not being able to cover in the secondary, like we saw last year a lot, giving up one of the most yards in the FBS. But I really think it's just going to be the one some more.
Absolutely. Now let's go to our keys to the game. We start with Zach. Talk us through Joe Milton.
So I think everybody kind of expected this one. Joe Milton. I think I in the studio am the only one who is still holding out for him. But I got to say, I've lived through the Garantano era, so I know what it's like. And I do not think that Joe is done yet. Now, we haven't seen Orange Bowl Joe, which is kind of what we're all waiting for. But you can't go down to Tuscaloosa and throw 100 yards like he did last game. Joe is really going to be the X factor in this game, and he needs to start getting the ball downfield. We need to just start open. Like with the opening drive, throw a 40-yard bomb, and just get his confidence building, because he is the key to winning in Tuscaloosa.
Absolutely. Colton, talk us through the pass rush.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Alabama's offensive line, so much already. And then our pass rush, I mean, it's one of our strengths. And I think this is the one huge advantage that we have over Alabama is our pass rush versus their offensive line, and it's got to show up. I mean, we talked about Arkansas had 5 sacks last weekend. Our pass rush is a lot better than Arkansas. I mean, we could really see 7, 8, 9 sacks in this game from Tennessee. And I think we're going to have to do that because, I mean, we've had trouble in the past against running quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks, and Milroe is one of those guys. So we've got to make sure we get to him, limit his ability to, move the ball down the field. And our pass rush, it's showed up so far, and I think it will this game, but it has to for us to win.
Absolutely. Luke, speed around, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that we're a run-first team right now, and I mean, I think that's got to keep going against Alabama. If we establish a good run game against them, it gives Joe more freedom to kind of, creative liberty with his throws, we'll call it. But I mean, if our run game fails us, I don't see us winning this game just for the sole reason that that's what's been propelling us this season along with our defense.
Sure. Now, let's go through real quick. We got our picks. Luke, start us off.
I think it's going to be a real defensive battle. Very different from last year where it was offense heavy. I think the Vols defense is going to overpower the Alabama offensive line a little bit more than they'll do to ours. So I got Tennessee winning this one 24-21.
All right, Colton?
I'll be devil's advocate again. I've got
Again,
Alabama
there we go.
here.
It's our good luck charm.
20-17 is my final score. I think it is going to be close. But A&M, our defense showed up, but I just don't trust the passing offense against this Alabama secondary and against this Alabama defense. I don't think we're going to be able to score a whole lot. It's going to come down to Joe Milton, like we've talked about over and over and over again. But like I said, I think the home field advantage for Alabama is huge. That made a huge difference last year. And I think Alabama's going to get this win 2017 once again. Low-scoring game, but I think Alabama gets it done.
There we go. Zach?
I mean, I've had this game circled on my calendar since October 16th, 2022. I've been waiting for this. I want to start my own streak against Alabama. I know Alabama doesn't have the traditional team, and they're a little bit weaker, and I think Tennessee's a little bit weaker. We're not super contenders for the playoffs, but I think we're still contenders for the SEC. With that being said, it's going to be a low-scoring game. I'm taking the Vols 24-23.
There we go.
And, Dixieland Delight is a song about Tennessee. Hit it, Sam. You guys will present.
Oh, my gosh.
Will present. You know what song you're playing?
Look at that. There we go. Well, jeez, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. I'm frazzled by all this. I mean, thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to wish the Vols the best of luck and their fans the best of luck as they travel down. Look, if you're going to the game, stay safe in Alabama. We know they can be pretty harsh down there, but from all of us at the Orange Zone, we want to thank you for watching. For Luke, Colton, and Zach, I'm Jackson Schock. We will see you next time. Peace.
Welcome back to another episode of Sportscast. I'm Luke Lamry, and we are here in Knoxville bracing our volunteers for the battlefield. The Vols are marching over to Tuscaloosa to take on number 11 ranked Alabama on Saturday, a highly anticipated game since the Vols upset the Crimson Tide in Neyland last year. The Crimson Tide look good, but I think the pros are underestimating the Vols. We know how it ended up last time. The anticipation is building, and the campus is buzzing. Let's get into it. First, I want to briefly talk last week. We played a great game against Texas A&M last Saturday. Despite some offensive struggles, the Vols got the job done. And they talked. I mean, there was a little chippiness going on, and we got the job done, okay? But I'll tell you this, the running game looked good. 232 yards, no touchdowns, but they look promising for Saturday, easily. Joe was rough. Joe was rough. We'll put it that way. He missed a lot of open receivers. 50% completion rate, interception. Flat out, we need him to show up Saturday. It's a necessity. It's non-negotiable. The defense was absolutely fantastic. They picked up a lot of slack for the offense. Besides the run game, I truly believe the offense called out sick. I don't really know what happened there, but the defense played well. They held Max Johnson, 0 touchdowns. We got 2 picks. If we bring that defense to Tuscaloosa, we have a shot. Okay, I'll tell you that. Let's look at the big one coming up Saturday. And I'm not talking about an earthquake. I'm not talking about a NASCAR crash. I'm talking about the barn burner that's about to take place in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Let me just tell you this. I despise Alabama athletes. I think they're low-class, arrogant, disgusting athletes. But for competition's sake, we got to look at some of the Tide's top guys. Quarterback Jalen Milroe versus Arkansas, great game last week, 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 174.8 QB rating. I mean, we got to focus on taking him down. I mean, he's known for his mobility. He's known for his ability to throw on the run. We have to contain him. That's a necessity. Wide receiver Jermaine Burton, listen to this, 23.5 yards per reception, 19 catches on the season. That's insane. 23 yards per catch, 446 yards as well, and a touchdown. Defense needs him locked down as best as possible. Defensive side, Caleb Downs, 54 total tackles, 2 picks. I think he's Bama's top defensive back. We have to keep his eyes on him when we're throwing the ball. Let's go keys to win for this Saturday. Joe's got to hit his passes. He's got to get the biscuit to the baby. He ranks 59th in completion percentage in college football. And I'll tell you this, Alabama, they're going to heckle the crap out of him, okay? They are going to absolutely tear him apart. He cannot collapse under pressure. He has got to change his performance from last week, otherwise we don't have a chance. The run game is our glimmer of hope on offense. Glimmer of hope, okay? And I'll tell you this, the combo of Wright, Small, and Sampson, we might as well have 3 military-grade tanks in our backfield. We have to use them, and they have to show up. Our defense looks beautiful right now. Alabama ranks 126 in sacks allowed, and we have some studs that are going to give them a run for their money. Tyler Barron, 6'4", 260. Okay, if I'm a quarterback and that man is running at me, I am getting in the fetal position on the field because that is a scary, scary dude. Okay, I mean, James Pierce Jr., I'll tell you this, good luck, Jalen, good luck. I mean, you're going to get absolutely ran through. That's all the time we've got here. I'll tell you, this will be a tough, tough game, and this is a tall order for Tennessee. It can be done, but we need to show up and we need to show out. Let's have some faith in the Vols. We're going to beat Bama. I'm Luke Lamry. Thank you for tuning in to Sportscast.
Thanks for watching another episode of Torch Sports this week. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Torch Sports UTK and on TikTok at Torch Sports to keep up with us. Have a great weekend, stay safe, and beat Bama.